Alright, in this lesson video, I'd like to show you an example of how you can incorporate secondary triads into your part writing. So, I've given you an example in the key of F minor, I have given you a bass line, and I've also given you your figured bass so you know what inversions your bass notes are going to be in. So let's go ahead first and figure out the harmonic analysis. So we're going to figure out the Roman numerals that go under each of these chords. And then after that, we'll go ahead and add our upper parts. Alright, we're in the key of F minor, so we're basing our whole analysis around the F minor scale. So our first note, F, does not have a 6 or 6/4 underneath it. It's all by itself. That means we're in root position. And F is the first step of the F minor scale, so we will write in a lowercase letter I, or Roman numeral 1. Alright, next we have another root position bass note, because there are no numbers underneath it or anything like that. And it's on A. If you go up, A is the third step of the scale. So it's going to get a Roman numeral 3. Now this is typically a major 3 chord in minor. Sometimes it can be augmented, but for the most part it's going to be major. Alright, next we have a first inversion bass note. So in order to figure out the root of this triad, we have to go down a third. So if we start on B and go down 3 steps, we have B, A, G. G is the root of our triad. In our F scale, G is the second scale degree. Therefore, this is going to be a 2 chord. Also in minor, 2 is typically diminished. And remember, diminished triads are used in almost exclusively in first inversion. Alright, next we have 2 chords in this next measure, but only 1 bass note. That's because the half note carries over into the second chord. Alright? We have a second inversion chord here on the first beat of this measure. And so to figure out the root of the first chord, we have to go down a fifth. So if we go down, we have C, B, A, G, F. F is the root of this triad, so this is going to be another 1 chord. Alright, remember, 5/3 equals root position. So when we show this, it's showing that even though we have the same bass note, now that bass note is going to be the root of the triad instead of the fifth. Don't be thrown off by this natural sign. It just means that the third of your triad has to be raised, and we'll use a natural sign to do it. So we know that now C on beat 2 is the root of our triad. That's going to be the 5th step of our F minor scale and make this a 5 chord. Now 5 is always major in how we'll use it in our part writing throughout the school year. But in order to make it major in a minor key, you have to raise the third, and that's what I'm talking about with this natural sign. When we go back and add in our upper voices, you have to make sure that E is E natural instead of E flat. Alrighty, let's go ahead and add in our upper voices. Alright, for our 1 chord, we need F, A, and C, and we need to double the F, so we'll have 2 Fs in there. I'm going to decide to put my A in the tenor. I'll put my second F, remember the first one is in the bass down here. My second F is going to go in the alto, and then I'm going to put my C in the soprano. So just to double check and make sure you have the correct notes in your chord, we have F, F, A, C. 2 Fs, 1 A, 1 C. We're good. Alrighty, our bass is moving up a third. That means we're going to have 2 common tones between our 1 chord and our 3 chord. This chord here, the 3 chord, has A, C, E. Our common tones are A and C. So wherever those are in our first chord, I'm going to carry them across in the same voice. So let's see, we have A in the tenor, so we'll keep it in the tenor here. And we have C in the soprano, so we'll keep that. And then we're just missing an E. So we have A, A, C, E will go right down here in the alto. Alright, next we have a diminished 2 chord in first inversion. Now remember, for diminished triads, you want to double the third instead of doubling the root or fifth of your triad. So we're going to double B. Now, at first glance, the most obvious place to put B might be in the tenor. You go from A up a step to B. But you don't want to do that because down here you go from A up a step to B in the bass, and that would create parallel octaves. So don't put your B in the tenor. Let's see, another good place for B would actually be up here in the soprano, just down one step. And then it works out quite nicely that E here can move down to D, and A can move down to G. Now let's step back and double check and make sure we don't have any incorrect parallel motion. All right, definitely between our tenor and bass, we're moving opposite. Actually, between bass and everything, we're moving the opposite direction, so that's okay. Let's look at the distance between our tenor and alto. We have an A flat to an E flat. That's a perfect fifth. Then we have a G to a D flat. If at first glance this looks like parallel fifths, which would not be okay, but from G to D flat, that's a diminished fifth. It's actually okay to go from a perfect fifth to a diminished fifth. Now, if we continue on to compare our tenor to our soprano and our tenor to our alto and alto soprano, we don't have any other incorrect parallel motion, so we're good to move on. Alrighty, next we're going up a second to our 1-6-4 chord. So our notes here are F, A, C, and remember, in a 6-4 chord, the fifth gets doubled, so we have to find a place for another C other than the one that's in the bass. Alright, let's see. We don't have any common tones. Let's try and put our C right here in the alto. Then we could have our tenor move up to A. Or rather, let's have that move down to F and have our soprano move down to A. So now we have two C's, an F, and an A. We're still following correct spacing and everything still works out. Again, it kind of looks like we have perfect fifths here, but this is a diminished fifth going to a perfect fifth, and again, that's okay to have in part writing. All right, next we're going to our root position 5 chord. So remember, we're going to have a common tone here, which is C. This is a C, E, G chord. So I'm going to go ahead and keep this C a half note. Now, in order to fit the rest of my chord in here and have the correct time signature and note values, my other notes which change are going to become quarter notes in the previous chord. All right, so we have our C holding across, and we have our C holding across in the bass. Now our other voices need to move down by step. So A is going to move down to G, and F is going to move down to E. And then, remember, we have to make sure that the third of our triad, which is E, has a natural sign by it. And there you have it. That's a good example of part writing using secondary chords and inversions.